for day 15. Getting our paper wet today. How you doing, huh? Check in with yourself. How's you feeling? You feeling okay today? You got to check that dipstick to make sure you're good. How's that internal locus of control, the eye of the hurricane that you are, cruising across the waters of your life?
Woo.
Check it out. Make sure you're good, okay? Is your fire stoked? Is that critical eye locked down in the hole? You got that impulse control on locked down? Lock it down if you don't now. It's okay if it gets loose every once in a while. Nobody's perfect. We ain't Jesus out here, people. But you got to keep it locked down if you want to be productive, okay? So on them times when you're going to be productive, make sure you lock that little fella down in that hole. Keep them locked in there. Keep them impulses under wraps. You know what I mean? How's that schedule? You got it aligned? Make sure it's aligned, people. It's day 15. I kind of try to structure this where the first 15 days we talk about the bricks and mortar of what we're going to do. And then the last 15 days we kind of go somewhere crazy with it, okay? We take it to the limits, you know? We talk about how to build something, and then the last 15 days we actually build something. I mean, that's crazy to think about, right? All right, now, I want to get into something a little bit kind of crazy today. Something kind of big. I've been thinking about it, how to present it for a little bit. And I'm going to attempt to start to present it today. Now, you probably are going to understand it when I talk about it mentally, but that don't mean you're going to get it, because this is a big bite, okay? And it comes from a place of a lot of years of me observing other artists, and my teacher, Yim Alkun, a master painter. I'll throw his link down. You can go look up, see who he is and all that good stuff. And he's a tremendous painter, Russian impressionist, lives in Taiwan, creates huge narrative works the size of walls, and about everything from how he escaped communism to run to Taiwan and to pursue art, and about his life, and going to Tibet and painting the landscapes in Tibet before it was taken over by the CCP, to all kinds of stuff, man. The guy is incredible. So I'd be sitting there, and I'd be watching him paint. And I'd watch him make the thousands of choices that he made to create a portrait or a landscape or a narrative or drawing or whatever. And I would sit there in awe and try to understand, how is he navigating this big arc that is this painting? And he would tell me in his broken English or through a translator sometimes about how to do it. And I'd sit there and I'd understand what he was saying to me, but I couldn't go and reproduce it on paper or on canvas or whatever. And it would be very frustrating. It would be so humbling that I was thinking, how am I going to have a future if I'm trying to do this? I'm over here in Taiwan. I'm trying to learn how to paint like him, how to draw like him. And I can't get it. He's telling me how to do it, and I can't get it. It makes sense up here, but I just can't get it. And it goes back to that concept that we talked about before, about the two types of information. Some information is cognitive. 1 + 1 is 2. I got it. I can reproduce it now. 2 + 2 is 4. Or another one that's like, okay, draw this face, but make it look good. All right. Well, that makes sense up here. Oh yeah, I'm trying to make it look good. But then when I come down here to do it, I can't do it. How do I do it? And what it is it's an organization of thought. Like I said, I realized early on that art was a refinement of thought, because there's no super physical attribute that was involved in it. You know, to hold the pen or the pencil doesn't take a tremendous amount of athleticism, and I not have to be super dexterous to do this. You know, anybody can make a line, and all a piece of art is a collection of lines, right? So where's the magic? The magic's up here. It's in your thoughts. So of course that drove me nuts, because you know, I told you guys I became an engineer, and so I knew I was capable. I knew I understood. I knew that I had the mental fortitude, or the, you know, enough horsepower up here to get just about anything. So how come I couldn't get this? It's driving me nuts, you know. But there was another issue with me that I didn't realize. I didn't know. And it was that emotional plumbing that we talked about yesterday. You can't learn nothing unless you got your emotional plumbing in order, okay? Because if you don't have your emotional plumbing in order, anxiety and trauma will stop you from learning, will stop you from creating. Any amount of fear will stop you. You won't be able to absorb nothing. You won't be able to experiment and go forward. So you have to get that out of the way first. I didn't know that. It took me a long time to figure that out. It's a lot like that Maslow's hierarchy of thought or pyramid of needs, where the the self enlightenment and abstract thought is at the very, very top. You have to fulfill all the needs before you can attack that very top need or creation. And that's what I'm trying to discuss with you right now. And so after you get that a handle on that emotional plumbing, like we talked about yesterday, you're in a position to go forward and kind of understand what I'm about to talk about right now. And so I'm sitting there and I'm watching Yim paint or draw or whatever, and I'm trying to understand the bigger picture, the really big picture of how to create artwork. What is the big picture, right? How do I get a handle on the big picture? I understand the A to B and you put the strokes in there, but how do I navigate the big picture to stack up a 16-hour drawing like a stack of cards so it comes to completion? How do I do that? You know, how do I do it like he does it, where he creates something beautiful? How do I do that? And what I came to understand was that it's about this concept of layers and channels. And the layers are what you do in your mind to put down on your paper. Okay? And the channels are the attributes within that layer. There's only 4 channels. The 4 channels are shape, value, hue, and saturation. Shape, obviously is how big or how small something looks like. Value, how light or how dark. Hue, warm or cool. Saturation, how intense the color is or how gray the color is, when you remove the saturation. And the way that you build a piece of artwork is that you build the layers on top of it, one another. You start out with the first layer when you're going to try and do your initial lay-in of the simple shape. When you do the lay-in, you're just doing one channel, shapes. You get me? You say you're going to lay in a head like this. You do one channel, just shape. Okay? And you solve the problems of the shapes. And the layer that you're putting down right there from your mind to your paper is the first set of goals that you have. Okay? So then after you have your shapes, the second layer, you're going to go and you're going to break it into light and dark. You're going to add another channel. Another variable of the next channel is going to be laid in there. And it's going to be value. Okay? And so now you're working with 2 channels. If you have something like the shadow, now you have 2 channels. 2 channels of information. You have shape and you have value. Okay? The value is simplified. It's only light and dark. And the shapes might have started out simplified, but as you progress, you refine them. You go from simple circles to boxes to 3-dimensional, and then finally to putting the anatomical shapes in there. And then if you want to go further, say for example you want to go further and you want to add another layer on top of your picture, you do something like this and you add color. You add the hue. And with the hue, you establish the anchor points of the colors that you want, and then as you go further, the next channel you can add the chroma, how intense the color is. Okay? Now, You're probably thinking, okay, well, what are we talking about here, right? How do you use this to navigate? Well, each layer that you start with in your mind and then you put down on the paper is the first goal set that you're gonna do, okay? And you do the same process with each layer. You work from simple to complex with the goals that you have. You get me? So when you do a lay-in, when you are going to sketch out the face for the first time, you start with simple shapes and you work to get to a goal of establishing the solving the problem or proportion of location, and maybe that's it. So you want the proportion and the location of everything to be correct. Okay? You solve all those problems, right? That means you never have to deal with those problems for the rest of the drawing. You might refine them, but you're not going to take an eyeball and say, oh, it needs to be over here. You've already solved the problem of where it needs to be. So you don't have to worry about that no more. So now you can free your mind up to attack in the next layer, the next channel, right? So then you go on and you add in the light and the dark. You put the shadows in there. And once you establish the shadows, you don't ever have to come back and solve that problem again. Now you can refine it as you go along, change a little bit here, change a little bit there, change a little bit here, change a little bit there. But that establishes the footprint or the path, the footprint, for when you lay in the paint color, the hue, the next channel, at the next layer. And you don't have to worry about the shape of the shadow because you've already fixed that. Now all you have to worry about is the hue of the color. You get what I'm saying, people? So you're not trying to eat that entire cake all at once. It's very complex, very hard to try to put in a multifaceted shape with a color with a value. That's a three-dimensional problem that your mind can't wrap its head around. You can't. And so what this should say to you is that a drawing or a painting is like a dance. You know when to step where, at what time, in what rhythm. You know which problem to solve when, at what time, so that later in the drawing, all your mind is doing is trying to solve one simple problem, one simple choice. Should this be lighter or darker? Not should this be lighter or darker, and is that shape right? Should it be wider? You can't handle that. That's when you start to make mistakes. You start to lose the clarity of your vision. Not only that, but you lose what you want to say in the drawing in the first place. And then frustration happens. And as soon as frustration comes in, it creates that anxiety which destroys your entire endeavor in the first place. Okay? So, the important thing to understand is that the layers are the milestones or the goal set for when you sit down to put down on your paper. Now, can you break your layers down and make them smaller? Yes, you can. You can break your layers as big or as small as you want. As you get more experience with this, your layers can stretch further and can encompass a wider range of things. But initially, you keep the layers simplified. Just like the shapes, just like the values, just like the hue, just like the saturation. You keep it simple and you stack them on top of each other so that you're only required to make small choices. Because with small choices, the success rate is much higher, and also if you fail, you can correct it much easier. You see, that's the whole goal of all of this drawing, of all of it. Now, it's a systematic process to solve simple problems. You break down complex problems into simple problems. Okay? So the layers is the thought process of how you go and how you set up your goals, right? The channels are the tools that you use to solve those problems and to meet those goals. You get what I'm saying? Now, I'm going to explain this again, and I might try to do a little drawing and visualize it so you can visualize it. But every artist goes through this process when they're sitting down to work on their drawing or their painting, and as a viewer, you don't know that. You just think it's just falling off the tip of their paintbrush right onto the canvas, and everything's right. And when you're watching them do it and they're so good at it, everything they do seems obvious. It seems obvious. Yeah, of course the mouth goes right there. It's perfect. Well, of course that's the right color right there. That's perfect. But it's because they're stacking all those ideas on top of choices that they've made that have been simple. And they're confident in all those choices, and the clarity of what they want to say then comes through the painting to such an extent that it actually grows a little bit of a hubris in the viewer because it looks so easy. Have you experienced that? It looks so easy, and it's so enticing that you run out and you get your brushes and your paint brushes and your pencils, and you're ready to go, and then you sat down and that frustration sits in on you, and then it lays a sour egg, and the smell is so terrible, and the hatred and the frustration that grows from within is so great that you just never want to do any of this again, and you don't want to watch anybody paint or draw again or anything like that. But it's a thought process. It's a strategy. It's a thought strategy about knowing when to add what information at what time. That's all it is. That's all it is. And you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. I'm telling you that right now. There ain't nothing special about me except for the fact that I discerned this. And I talked to the man who could do it. And I asked him how to do it. And I didn't get it all at once either. I took copious notes. I took videos, all that kind of stuff. I came home. I studied. I still didn't get it until I got that emotional plumbing together. And then after I got that emotional plumbing together, it started to slowly seep into my consciousness, and I started to understand. And then my colors, they got cleaner. My shapes got better. My forms got more elegant. They got more refined. And then it made sense. Then I got it. Then I understood. So I hope I explained that all right. I'm going to give it a go again. But I hope you could understand what I'm trying to communicate here. It's a big bite. It's a big bite. Because all artwork is a strategy of thought. That's all it is. A strategy of thought. How to communicate what, when, onto the paper or the canvas in order to communicate the emotion that's inside me to you. That's all it is. So I want you to think about that. You're probably not going to get it all at once. You'll probably be confused. If you have questions, please ask me. Put it down in the comments. I'm going to make an effort to come into the YouTube comments and put my answers and thoughts in there, because I really want to clarify this for people so that they understand. So they, just like going to the gym, you can practice this thought process and get good at it. Because each layer you do the same thought process. It's just like a transmission that you shift the gears higher and higher and higher, but the engine's doing the same work. You do the same work at each layer. You just get it more refined the higher you go. And once you think about that, it's very simple. It becomes very simple because you solve the same problems over and over again, and then the mystery dissipates, okay? And then it becomes obvious for you. It's still a magic trick for the viewer, but it's obvious for you because all the magic goes on in here. So let's think about it. Let's get out there and let's get after it, okay? Give it a go today. Try something in your sketchbook, but think about what I'm talking about, okay? Think about it. Do something fun for your watercolor, but think about the layers and the channels, okay? All right, we'll talk about it more later. Get out there. Get after it.